Today we're talking booms and busts. Also, a little bit of Cardinals Cowboys rivalry with high school student Micah Hartwig. Stay tuned.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast with Kelly Singh.
Murray keeps it downfield. It's caught. It is caught. DeAndre Hopkins. Miraculous. It's Murray magic.
The sickest Arizona Cardinals podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Welcome to the sickest Arizona Cardinals podcast. I'm your host, Kelly Singh, and today I have a special guest with me, Micah Hartwig. He is the son of one of my friends, longtime friend Rodney Hartwig. And today we're going to be kind of just chatting about the NFL draft this year and how our teams did. Maybe just how the league did overall. But Micah, you are a hardcore Cowboys fan. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, sadly.
Sadly, but you hang in there because I could say
I
the
do.
same thing. The Cardinals have not been doing great.
Yeah, I kind of inherited it, so I mean, I'm stuck with it, but I do love my Cowboys.
Do you have other teams that you like to watch?
Like in football, so fantasy, kind of my first year of fantasy football, I drafted Josh Allen and he was a league winner for me.
Yeah,
So I kind of like the Bills. And from time to time I root for the Cardinals, I guess.
I guess. When they're
I
not
guess.
playing the Cowboys.
Yeah. Especially when they're playing the Eagles.
Yeah. Well, fantasy football also kind of makes things difficult for me too, because you
Yeah,
really do fall in love with a player and you're like,
yeah,
that's my guy.
yep. And it's like, especially those weeks when it's like, oh, I need them to get like 30 points, but they're going against my team, so it's a cost.
Exactly. Before we dive in, I just want to kind of get people familiar with you too. So I'm going off script a little bit. What grade are you in?
I am in, I'm a freshman in high school. Uh, this is actually what, basically my last week of freshman year. So basically going into sophomore
More.
15.
And you're playing football, right?
Yes, I do play football. I am a D tackle. Despite my smaller frame, I've always loved to play defense, and I just love defense in football.
I love that. And you said this was your first year of fantasy football. So did you manage the team all on your own this year?
So it was actually this was my third year.
Oh,
My first year though, which was in 2021, I had drafted Josh
that was
Allen.
the Josh Allen year.
Yeah.
Okay.
But this was my third year, and yes, the first year was before I had a phone, so I was kind of doing it on my mom's phone. Obviously, I was this, what, 13 and 12, 13-year-old. I'm just sending trades every week. You can ask my dad. I sent like 10 trades to every person every week. I was like, Dad, why aren't they accepting my trades? I was just like, it was something dumb like Tyler Boyd and freaking Greg Dortch for Saquon Barkley. I'm like, but they'll technically average more points that week. But yeah. It's just a lot of fun. It's something I'd been wanting to do and finally got the permission to do.
Good. I usually get nervous trading because I feel like I drafted my team for a reason, and
Yeah.
why would I trade them off? But I've gotten better over time about letting
Yeah.
go of people.
Yeah, it was kind of my first year. I was a little trigger happy. I was definitely like just this guy didn't do a really good performance this week. Let's get rid of him.
I feel
So
that.
yeah.
Well, sometimes you have to listen to your gut. So, speaking
Yeah.
of listening to your gut, what is your initial gut reaction? What is the grade for you would give the Cowboys for their draft this year?
Yeah, my initial reaction really without, watching film or looking at a lot of stats of, the players that we've drafted, the nine of them. But I'm gonna give them an A. I think it's an A because they target the positions of need. And while like a lot of people are saying Tyler Booker was a bad pick,
Hmm.
I I agree and I disagree. Because on my mock drafts, or not my mock drafts, but my draft grades, I had him in the 20s, more mid 20s. But I also think he was by far the best fit for the Cowboys in the first round. And I think it ended up working very well. With some other things going on after the draft, with a lot of speculation around them drafting, maybe a wide receiver. I am
Hmm.
glad they didn't. And I love that because, you know, obviously the big guy in the trenches, Zach Martin, had retired, which for me, all-time great, for the Cowboys. So I am very happy that they drafted him. He brings that energy and toughness. We also grabbed Donovan Azareku, who I had in late first round grade. Had 16 and a half sacks in 2024 in his senior year in a tough ACC conference, which was very competitive. And we also grabbed Siobhan Rivell Jr., who we'll talk about a little bit later,
Okay.
while also adding, you know, two players at the running back position, which was a heavy need. And while they were late round picks, some D tackle depth, which hopefully, if they develop right, can end up being some good playmakers for us.
Yes, that's great. I mean, you're not alone. I've read many reports that came out after the draft giving the Dallas A, B. I don't know that I saw too many terrible calls about it. Seems like a lot of people have high hopes for the Cowboys. I was thinking the Cardinals, they also got high
Oh,
marks
yeah.
and A's
Yes.
and B's. The Cardinals, the way you were describing the Cowboys is very similar to how I would describe the Cardinals draft.
Hmm.
They were really paying attention to the needs of the team. They didn't like fall to draft a wide receiver, which was highly
Yes.
speculated.
Yes.
So I think sticking to the plan for both of these teams really paid off.
Yeah. Especially for a team like the Cowboys with a GM who is very trigger happy and will draft someone you know, if there's a lot of talk around him. So I'm very glad that they were able to stick to their positions. And yeah, I totally agree with the Cardinals. I think they had one of the better drafts. So yeah.
Yeah. This is going to be a good season, I think.
Yeah, I definitely think you guys are more underrated than people are saying because a lot of people are saying, 4-12, 3-15. I have them more, I'll talk about that a little bit later, but
Okay. We can talk about that later for
yeah.
sure. Um, who was the favorite pick that your team made in the draft?
Yes. And yeah, I have a little story about this one. I mean, I'm watching my show, I'm paying attention to the draft a little, but once it gets to those rounds, especially the third round with all those compensatory picks, there's a lot of things going on. So I'm kind of just sitting back watching my TV, and my dad walks in and is like, "Hey, do you know this kid like by Siobhan something?" I'm like, "Siobhan Rivell Jr.?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Yeah, the Cowboys just picked him in the third round." And he's by far my favorite pick for the Cowboys and maybe even in the entire draft because he slits us. At the beginning of the year, all the way up until I think it was somewhere in October or somewhere around there, and he was a mid first round grade
Mm.
as he was seen as, up there with who you guys drafted, Will Johnson, as the number one, number two cornerback prospect in the draft before he unluckily tore his ACL.
Yeah.
It does suck that he did tear his ACL, which did cause him to slide all that way. But I do think if we're able to have him develop well, get him back to full form, he could be a very, very good player, especially with his footwork and his size, which is I think around 5'11", 6 foot, 190 pounds. I think he could be a very good complement and be a lockdown corner like with the two ball hawks that we have.
For sure. I had a hard time picking a favorite. When I was at the draft, there weren't that many players that were there to be interviewed. A lot of players stayed home this year, I noticed,
Yeah.
which I find to be really interesting because if I know that I'm going to be drafted, I don't care what round it is. I'm going to be there. I want to go on stage. I want to hold up my jersey. I want to do all of that. So I was
Yeah.
super surprised that so many stayed home. But Travis Hunter was so good. I don't know. He was a good interview. He had so much energy. When he gets drafted, he's like banging on the walls and smiling the whole time and dancing. And that was actually my question to him was if he celebrates like that all the time.
Yeah.
He said that he does. So, just personality wise, I really liked him as a pick. For the Cardinals, it was hard for me to choose, but I think you mentioned Will Johnson, cornerback out of Michigan, and he was really bothered to have slid. And people were giving a lot of grief for previous injuries, but I think we need to be able to look past that, especially if it
Yeah.
wasn't like this season's injury.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at on favorites.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And you're talking about Travis Hunter's energy, which he showed was a lot. I mean, Tyler Booker's energy was on another level compared to everybody,
That's
besides maybe Maxwell Hairston, who, I mean, I love that guy's personality. He was a very nice, but Tyler Booker just so excited. You might not see it from the way that he was on TV, but he's also a dog in the trenches. He will make you quit. So he was probably, a close second, but yeah, I just had to go with Siobhan Rivell, just, you know, the draft side. And yeah, Will Johnson, I think I think people nowadays and GMs are paying too much attention to to injuries that, you know, if they're being cleared to play, they should be, thought of as the player that they can be when they're fully healthy, not the player that they are right now.
I agree. I agree. So, what was your biggest draft question mark? Which pick, whether it's for the Cowboys or any team, made you go, that's interesting?
Yeah, so I'm gonna go with a Cowboys pick. And I love the pick. I love the player that they picked, but it made me worry about what's going on with the Cowboys and Micah Parsons, and the pick is Donovan Azureku. Um, the player, like I said, does not have me worried. I think he's a fantastic player, fantastic pick. What worries me is what is really going on with that relationship, that very special relationship that we need to have with Micah Parsons. While we did need an edge, it's also just making me worry a little with all that, while I didn't think we're that serious, all the trade rumors that were going around during the draft and the contract negotiations, which still have not been signed yet, even
Yeah.
after reportedly they have been, very close to a agreement,
Agreement.
but apparently Jerry Jones, doesn't like to contact agents now. So that was my biggest question mark pick. You know, what is going on in that building between Jerry Jones and the Cowboys and Micah Parsons? And, he's by far my favorite player.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an edge, which is my dream position. He's got my name.
hmm
So it does make me worry a little about that.
I don't blame you. Micah Parsons, I've drafted him many years in a row for fantasy that has slots for defense. So IDP, it's called.
Yeah.
For those who are not familiar, I enjoy drafting individual defensive players in a draft. I have some leagues where it's just three people that you can pick, and I have ones where you fill every position. So Micah Parsons, he better get picked up. I need him. I need them to sort this contract
Yes.
negotiation. Oh goodness. The biggest question mark I think for me that made me pause is more of just as a fan thinking of my Cardinals and my quarterback who needs protection. And I was worried that we didn't do enough to protect him. So I don't have a single question mark player, but I would
Yeah.
say I did expect to see more O line. Um, but they
Yeah.
know what they're doing. I'm just a fanalist.
Yeah. You guys did go very defensive heavy. I'm looking at it right now. I mean, you only drafted one offensive player. That was O lineman Hayden Connor in the sixth. What I
Mm-hmm.
do love is, as an Ohio State fan, oh, I know you guys are gonna hate, but Cody Simon, Denzel Burke, two Buckeyes drafted back to back. I think they can be real playmakers. But yeah, that is something that I'm looking at right now, and it's like, yeah, there is some question marks. Don't sleep on Paris Johnson, but there is some question marks there.
I think so too. But I'm excited to see it all come together in the end. And there are many Ohio State players now that
Oh
are
yeah,
making up the Cardinals
yeah.
locker room.
Have you
So,
seen the ones where it's like the Arizona Buckeyes or the
yeah,
Ohio State Cardinals? Like you got a lot.
it's funny. So hopefully those Michigan guys can get along with the Ohio State guys. I'm sure that it's going to be cohesive. Everything will be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, so this might be a hard question because I really feel like it's evenly matched. So I don't know if I want to ask who walked away better prepared for the season, Cardinals or Cowboys, but do you think this is the year the Cowboys at home can beat the Cardinals and break that 9-game losing streak?
Yeah. I don't know, man, because I was at the last one with Josh Dobbs as the quarterback. I was at that one, and
Mm-hmm.
that was just heartbreaking.
I bet.
So honestly, I don't have a clue, but I do know that both teams walked away better from the draft. I would say you guys or you guys walked away a little bit more prepared for the season, while we walked away a little bit more prepared for the future.
Mm-hmm.
With the picks of Siobhan Ravel,
Yeah.
Tyler Booker, all that. And you guys have a lot of instant impact players with Walter Nolan, these older players with Denzel Burke, Cody Simon, Will Johnson. Um, but obviously I have to, I have to give the edge to the Cowboys. But I do think you guys did good. But, honestly, too bad you guys can't draft height for a quarterback because that would be a game changer for you guys.
Ah, you're not alone thinking that for sure.
Yeah.
We'll have to see. That game is actually on my birthday. We were
Oh,
considering going, but maybe we decided not to. So maybe since I'm not going, I can't add that extra positive energy.
yeah,
You might have a chance.
maybe, maybe.
Okay, let's talk about other teams. Is there another team that you think just absolutely killed it in the draft?
If it wasn't one of our two teams,
Yeah.
because I was very leaning, like the Cardinals, in my opinion, had an amazing draft but I think I have to go to the Bills or the Ravens. Um, I mean, you got the Ravens who had late round picks, but they were able to get Malachi Starks at safety at pick 27, who me personally, I had an early first round grade, mid early first round grade. You were able to add Mike Green in the late second round, who a lot of people, which coming into the draft, maybe not me, but I still had him as a first round grade. A lot of people had him, going top 10. So I think that was very nice. You get Emory Jones at offensive tackle, in the third round. So I think, they're able to grab some O-line help there. You grab some linebackers, a fast, strong linebacker. You grab a very speedy player in LeJontay Wester who can serve as a punt returner or a slot wide receiver. They also added cornerback depth, and they also added, you know, the best place kicker in the draft to replace the one who shall not be named.
You know what's funny is I was going to say the exact same thing, Ravens, although half of my household are big Ravens fans, and they have definitely become close to my heart. When they drafted Malachi Starks, immediately I think of Kyle Hamilton, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is almost like a cheat code, I feel like. And then
Yes.
you've got Tyler Loop, the kicker, as you mentioned, who's already in practice broken yardage records set by he who shall not be named. So we
Yeah.
might see some real fireworks this year from the Ravens. I mean,
Yeah.
not that we don't any other
Yeah,
year, but
obviously. Yeah. And you also have the Bills, who I think also added some great players. And, they targeted their D tackle, grabbing TJ Sanders in the second, Deion Walker in the fourth, who, a lot of people had at the beginning of the year a first round grade coming out of Kentucky. He did have a disappointing season. And also, not a lot of people are talking about him, but Landon Jackson, who's an edge out of Arkansas, who had a 40.5-inch vertical and a 10.9 broad jump, which were both number one. So you get a extremely explosive edge with two very good D tackles. So I think they targeted their defense very well.
yeah, I agree. That's all really great insight. I was thinking about, now I'm trying to Google because I can't remember if it was the Rams or the Chargers who traded back. That moving on to the next topic is head scratchers. Did you have any head scratchers, or why the heck did they do that? Thoughts? There wasn't much trading back to speak of. And then when that one happened, oh gosh, I don't know if it was the Rams or the Chargers, but I'm like,
I
why
think
the
it was the Rams because the Giants traded back in for Jackson Dart. So it was
Yes.
the Rams.
Yeah. And I remember thinking that was an odd move, considering the Rams' needs. And then I have a friend who on our Sick Podcast Network hosts the Rams recap, and I think he may have felt similarly, but of course, as fans, everybody just accepts what happens. But for me, I was like, that was a little weird because it allowed now I remember why the Chargers stuck in my head, because it allowed the Chargers to gain a tight end, and I think that was a need
Uh,
for both teams.
mhm.
So, yeah. Do you have anything? And if you can't think of anything that you were like, what? That's okay.
So, yeah, just like you said earlier, there wasn't a lot of them. One that, maybe I'll get called a casual for not knowing all the insight for this, but was the first round trade between Kansas City and Philadelphia, with Philadelphia moving up one spot to Kansas City's pick, which confused me a lot because from Kansas City's standpoint, you know, you really don't want to trade back if there's a player there. So if Philly's trading up because they think Kansas City's going to take him, why would Kansas City let him, you know, let them get that pick? So it was a very confusing moment for me. I had no clue what was happening. And obviously, I see KC winning that trade because I assume Jihad Jihad Campbell, I think it was not the player that they were gonna pick, and they got, whatever they got, a fifth or a sixth in
Mm-hmm.
return.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about because I was thinking that is not what I expected to happen. So that was a little wild. I agree.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk quarterbacks because
hmm
there was a lot of discussion that this wasn't the greatest quarterback class, which
Yes.
is fine.
hmm
But do you think there is a rookie quarterback who is set up to succeed?
There was a lot of quarterbacks taken, but in reality, I only see three quarterbacks
Yeah.
truly starting a game
Yeah.
or, possibly a couple games this year. With obviously Cam Ward, who I think is going to start day one, who was coming in as the best quarterback prospect. But I have to go with, which honestly now coming to mind, what could have been applied in the last question, but Tyler Show, I think he will struggle the most. I mean, first of all, I don't think he should have gotten picked that early. I think if they wanted to take a quarterback, they should have waited longer. And also, I think the Saints are the worst team in the league.
Mm,
I honestly, I don't see a lot of bright spots on that team. I see Chris Olave, who, you know, I love him, all-time Ohio State great, but he's been suffering with those concussions. I don't see a lot of good defense. I see them making question mark moves all over with, Chase Young, signing him to like a $30 million contract for an inconsistent player, you know. So that's who I think will struggle the most. And who I will have succeed, I wouldn't really call succeed, but kind of have the better games. I'm gonna have to lean to Jackson Dart, and
hmm
that is solely based off Malik Neighbors. I mean,
hmm
you got the best wide receiver out of all three of them, so I think that's just really why I'm leaning towards him.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, exactly. There's not that many quarterbacks that are ready to start.
Yeah.
Do you think that it was fair? I don't know if fair is the right word. Do you think it was expected that Shador Sanders fell so far? Or was that a surprise? Or what do you think about that whole situation?
Yeah. Um, it was a very weird situation because coming into the draft, he had like there was a lot going on with him. He was a polarizing prospect, not even for his skill, just because, all the media attention around him. So, me personally, I was never the biggest fan of Shador Sanders, and I'll admit that. I don't
Yeah.
think he deserved a lot of the accolades and a lot of the hype that he got. I did not have him going sixth round. I really, I thought he would get picked in the second round, to a
hmm
team. But to like the Browns, who I did not think were going to trade out of that spot, which was a crazy move.
Yeah.
But I thought you could see that Travis Hunter Shador pairing again in Cleveland. So it was very interesting. But something that me and my dad have talked about, um, and that I have come to realize is Shador, like as a prospect, it wasn't just Shador Sanders. You got to remember the last name. So whoever's drafting Shador is gonna have the looming Dion,
Yeah.
and you know you got a coach there who's like, oh, he's not starting Shador, and then the quarterback has a bad game. It's like, what the heck? Why aren't you starting Shador? Or Shador starts and he has a bad game. It's like, what the heck? Why aren't you getting the best out of him? So it's Dion's always gonna be looming over him. You're always gonna have that pressure where it's like, I could just lose my job for Dion just because I drafted his son. So that's why I think he fell so far.
I agree with you. I don't think it's because necessarily because he's not going to live up to the hype. I think a lot of it is teams just aren't going to want to deal with the circus that's going to come with him being on the team.
hmm
And maybe Dion's gotten some advice, or maybe they've spoken to the family and they're like, "Hey, you guys just need to chill." Maybe that'll happen. Who knows? No,
You never know.
you never know. We've talked about a lot of players, and I'm looking at some of the questions I have left, and I'm sure we would be repeating a bunch of our names, but I'll ask one more question of you, which is some of these are very similar as I'm looking at them, but is there a rookie from any team that you think is just prepared to make the biggest impact this season? And it can be a repeat.
I have to pick Travis Hunter, and that's not even as an impact on his team. He does look like an outstanding player,
Mhm.
but it's more the impact that he'll make on the league.
Yeah.
We've never really seen this, especially in the modern era, where a legitimate player who is a star on both sides, who plays a lot of snaps on both sides. We've never seen that. So I am very interested in seeing, will the Jaguars let him do that? Will they force him to play one or the other? And if they do let him, what's going to happen? Is he going to, be the same as he was in college, being able to play 120 snaps a game? Because it's a very different game from college to NFL. So that is what I have as the biggest impact, um, just because we've never really seen this before.
That's a really great insight. I'm glad that you mentioned that because we hadn't mentioned that dual position yet in this podcast. So great insights, Micah. Give me your prediction for the Cowboys record this season.
The new OC definitely targeted what he want. He got some down and dirty running backs. He targeted Tyler Booker. So I like that, but you also got to look like Brian Schottenheimer is not the coach that you want on your team who is obviously always gunning to make it to the Super Bowl. So it's very hard, but I'm leaning towards kind of the same record as last year, a 9-8, 8-9 season, because we have the toughest schedule in the league, in my opinion. We got those weeks 11 through 17 where it's all people with 11 wins or higher. So that is very impactful.
Mhm.
So I gotta go with a, you know, close to 500 record. So 9-8, 8-9.
Yeah, I was the same with the Cardinals last year. I'm aiming a little higher this year because of schedule strength being, I think, the fifth easiest, they're saying, in the league. So I'm going to go maybe with, what is it, 10-7, I guess? Or I think so. I think that's where I'm going to land.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, for the Cardinals, it will be, does Kyler Murray prove himself as a legitimate franchise quarterback?
Yeah,
Because,
this
there
is
was
pretty
some year,
much it.
yeah, yeah, there was a year, I think it was like 3 years ago, where he looked, oh, this guy can be great. But there's been a lot of question marks these past few years where it's like, does he really have all the attributes and mentality, especially with those COD allegations,
Yeah.
um, to be a franchise quarterback?
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting because I feel besides a little bit of their O-line, they've set him up pretty well. They've got in him in the past DeAndre Hopkins. They have Marvin Harrison Jr. now, James Conner, all those. So I think this season is based on him. Kyler Murray has a bad season. Cardinals have a bad season. He has a good season, like he's shown he can. I think it will be a good season for you guys.
I agree. Well, Micah, I had such a great time chatting with you. I can't wait for this episode to come out. It'll likely be Friday or Saturday, so be on the lookout.
I
And
definitely will.
do you have any final thoughts? Anything else you want to share about your team or the draft or football in general?
I have two players that people should look out for, and that's James Pierce and Titaro and McMillan. Because James Pierce, they traded back into the first round for him. I think he's a great prospect. And Titaro and McMillan, he's a very big boomer bust. and I want to see how he does because he was speculated to go to the Cowboys, and thankfully they drafted him.
You gave some good insights. So, those of you that play in dynasty leagues, I hope you were taking notes because you might want to pick some of those players up.
Yeah.
Micah, where can people find you? I know you've recently joined the app formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I have a lot of social media. We can go Twitter. My Twitter is at Hartwig underscore Micah, and Hartwig is spelled Hartwig, and then underscore Micah, all lowercase. Yep, it was
Sound
very nice being on this podcast. I know I've been wanting to be on here for a while, and we've been kind of talking about it for a while, but I'm glad we finally got it done. I'm very, very glad that I was able to come on here
Me
and talk about football.
too. Yeah, this was great. I'll have to have you on again. I've been taking a little break in the off season, not doing a weekly show, but weekly shows are coming back, especially the first week of June, and I'll have a big special announcement. But we'll have to have you back on again
Mhm.
sometime during this season, Micah.
Yeah, I am always open for talking with you. I mean, I got school from 8:30 to 4:30, and if I don't have practice, I am open all the time. So you got my number, you got my Twitter, I'm open. Yep.
Well, thanks everybody for listening. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, comment, all the things, whether you're watching on YouTube, which I know not too many of you do, but it seems like a lot of you are listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just make sure that you're giving us some love, and I will see you next time. Bye.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast with Kelly Singh on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.